What's your name and what do you do?
My name is Dominic Wenner and I am the founder of Alpha 21, which is a men's function health optimization program. We work with men over the age of 35 using comprehensive testing, blood testing, genetic testing to help them eradicate health issues and get into the best shape of their life.
What is your biggest pet peeve in the men's health industry?
My biggest pet peeve in the men's health industry, well, I have quite a few. So I would say the if it fits your macros approach is a big pet peeve of mine. The idea that you could eat whatever you want basically, and that should be, kind of accepted and normalized just to eat whatever you want as long as it fits your macros. Because what that does to me is it emphasizes that, health isn't all that important. Calories are the most important thing, which, okay, if all you care about is dropping some body fat, there's an argument for that. But if you actually want to live a long and healthy lifestyle, then you need to think deeper and you need to think about real food more than just calories.
So what's the most underrated health habit that most men don't take seriously?
The most underrated health habit that most men don't take seriously has to be sleep, because it's something that people take for granted. We sleep every night for the most part. But people, no matter how many times you hammer home the importance of sleep and the negative implications of not sleeping well, people still neglect it. I've worked with guys for months and months and months where I'm hammering home to them to improve on the sleep, work on the sleep, and they still don't really appreciate the full value, and then they do it and everything changes. And so I think it's this thing, sleep, that because we have to do it every day, people disregard it as being something that we really need to focus on to get right. But for me, if we think of this kind of pyramid of priorities, sleep is the very foundation of that, because when you sleep properly, everything is made easier. You have less cravings and hunger, you have more motivation and energy, you progress better in the gym, and it creates this whole snowball effect across everything that you're doing, which just improves everything. And if you don't sleep right, and I've learned this the hard way myself from not sleeping very well back in the day, many years ago, don't sleep well, everything will suffer and you will make your whole journey 10 times harder.
So what's the most memorable client result you've seen?
The most memorable client result I've seen so many. This is a tough question. I would say, I'm gonna maybe throw two. I would say a client I worked with 3 or 4 years ago, Lee, was a remarkable transformation, because I remember having the initial call with him and he was in a very, very bad way. Early 40s, could barely move. He had psoriatic arthritis, which is a condition in which you get really inflamed joints to the point bad enough, it's very, very painful. You can't really train, you can't really exercise, you can't really move. So he was in a quite a bad spot, sore all throughout his joints, lots of issues of inflammation. And we discovered very early on that it was a gut related, root cause. He had leaky gut and he had dysbiosis and he had fungal issues. And so we ran a very particular protocol on him for 12 weeks. And if you see his transformations over the initial 12 weeks, his belly goes from this big kind of like balloon. He's not massive all around, but his belly is like this balloon. And over 12 weeks, he lost about 20 kilos and this belly just completely, disappears over 12 weeks. And the biggest thing was his bloating and all of his different digestive symptoms like reflux, loose stools, completely cleared in 12 weeks. And then because of that, his joint pain was reversed. And that was just a sign that all of the inflammation was being caused from the gut issue that he had. And then if you fast forward 12 months, he, completely transformed everything, off his medication, symptoms free. And I have to say that was probably one of the most remarkable client results I've seen. I could name more. I could name many more, but I'll leave it there for the sake of this.
What personality traits do you think are holding men back from actually achieving their goals?
Great question. I think the most common one I see is this all or nothing approach. The idea that you have to have everything perfect or you're doing none of it. That's a really, really common one for guys, where they kind of think, well, if I'm not all in, then I'm all out, which I think there's pros and cons to this. If you've got the mindset, I regard myself as someone who's kind of like, if I'm in, I'm in, right? But I've had to train myself that when I'm not in, because maybe I can't be all in on my health at one given time, I have a foundation of non-negotiables that never leave. So what I mean by that is if I want to really push my health, I will go all in. But when I'm not all in, I will always keep non-negotiables of sleep in place. I will always keep non-negotiables of a good diet in place. I will always keep non-negotiables of training, even if it's like 2 or 3 times a week. They will never ever stop. And that's what I think guys have to learn. If they have this all or nothing approach, you have to learn to have these non-negotiables locked in. So that's one personality trait that really lets guys down. Another one is offloading responsibility. The reality is, like, you're the only one who can put yourself into any position. You're the only reason you are where you are. And that's a really important mindset conclusion to come to, is you're the one who got yourself here, and you're the one who can get yourself out. And it's only your decisions and your actions that are going to do that. And you can either look at that from a perspective of, out of control. I don't have the power to change it. Or you can look at it as like, that's actually empowering. If I want to make the decisions to change my life, I can do it. Simple as that. So I think that's a really, really important one. You are responsible at the end of the day, no one else. And that's always going to be the case.
So did you have that mindset when you were doing bodybuilding?
The mindset of being responsible? Yeah, I think I did. It taught me a lot of that. Like bodybuilding taught me to be responsible for my daily decisions. It taught me that I had control. If I lied to myself and ate the wrong thing, I wouldn't make progress. If I did what I said I was going to do, I would make progress. If I followed the script, it would work. If I didn't follow the script, it wouldn't. So although I, not a big fan of the bodybuilding lifestyle, it taught me a lot of lessons with regards to if I do the work, I'm going to get the result. And it was as simple as that. It was a simple formula that if I followed it, it would work. And that's why when I have clients say to me, I'm in a deficit or I've done this and that and it's not worked, it's like the biggest thing is it's probably more to do with the fact you haven't done it as well as you should, rather than that the thing hasn't worked. Because if it's that the thing hasn't worked, then it's basically that you are defying the laws of the universe. Think about that. Like actually honesty around have you done the work is a big thing. And that's what bodybuilding taught me.
Do you think you'd ever do another bodybuilding position?
No, I would never go back to bodybuilding purely because, again, I got a lot from it. I had a lot of, I learned a lot of lessons. I got a lot of value. It taught me a lot of kind of hard lessons, but I wouldn't go back to it purely because I guess this ties into my all or nothing approach, because I couldn't give my all to that anymore. And it is a sport that requires everything to be put in. I always say, like, and there's people who do bodybuilding will say this, bodybuilding is the hardest sport you will do. Not because it takes a particular talent or anything like that, but because you never stop. It doesn't end at any point. You don't get an hour off, because if you have a bit of food that doesn't match your plan, or you lack sleep for one night, or you do something that is contradictory to the process you're trying to do, then it can derail you for the week. And so it's something you are on all the time. I remember when I used to do it, summer would come, people would be having barbecues, going out, enjoying food, and you just couldn't do any of that. It's a sport you're playing 24/7 if you do it properly. And again, it teaches you a lot of discipline, but I wouldn't do it again because it restricts, life in my eyes. I didn't love it enough to sacrifice my entire life to do it.
What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done in the gym?
I can beat anyone with the most embarrassing thing I've done in the gym. I can guarantee. If you listen to this now and you think you can beat this, I want to hear from you, right? When I first had a coach, my first ever coach, I was about 18 years old. I used to travel down about an hour and a half to go and train with him in his private facility. And there was maybe 5 or 6 people training in there. So fortunately for me, there was not that many numbers in there. So this makes it a little bit less embarrassing, but it was still embarrassing. Anyway, it was a squatting session, and I was wearing trousers, and we went to do squats, and as I went down, I heard this big ripping noise, right? I was thinking, Christ, what's that? Checked, and I had a huge rip in my trousers, right? So I thought, okay, cool, I'll carry on. It's not the end of the world. I've still got my boxers on, so I can still train. Didn't tell anyone because I just thought, I'll just get through the session. Anyway, carry on squatting, squat a little bit lower, another one. So I'm thinking, Christ, those trousers are they're really falling to pieces. Look down, and my undies have ripped. So I've got not only ripped trousers, I've got fully ripped boxers too. And then I'm trying to keep it to myself because I'm a young guy, 18 years old. I don't want to go telling people. I haven't got any spare changes of clothes. So I have to go for another maybe 30, 40 minutes of a workout, basically with my nuts hanging out the bottom of these trousers. I'm getting about this. Carl, if you're watching this now, this is my coach. If you watch this now, I apologize. I hope you've washed the seat of your bike, because I was on doing bike sprints at the end, and I don't want to go into too much details, but it was not a pretty sight when you're doing those. So that's the most embarrassing thing I've done. Fortunately, I don't think anyone saw it, I think, from memory, but for me, it wasn't good.
Lowest point versus highest point in your career?
Lowest point versus high point in my career. The lowest point in my career was probably hitting burnout. I think that was pretty dark, because I didn't know what burnout was. That's a big thing. Like, I thought I'm invincible. I hear people talking about burnout. I'm not going to be one of those people that hit burnout. Ultimately, I'm in the health space. I surely am not going to hit burnout. But then I did fully hit burnout in lockdown, the first lockdown, maybe second lockdown. And it lasted about maybe 6 to 9 months, I can't remember specifically. But that was the lowest point, because I physically could not. It was the one thing that made me look in the mirror and go, I can't be in this position again, because I nearly lost all of my clients, I nearly lost my full business, and my home life nearly fell to pieces. So that was one of the biggest, I would say that was the lowest point in my career. career. The highest point is a tough one. You know, I think we've had so many amazing events inside the program recently where you're just listening to people talk about transformations that you just think, I've actually, like, we as a coaching program have been able to help someone achieve that, and something where the novelty will never wear off, because you're hearing people, you know, who in their own words have said they're going to be, you know, they might not be here in 5-10 years if they don't make a change, and then 6 months later they're off all medications and no sign of any chronic issues, and they've got abs and they're just not the same person anymore. Like, that's a story we hear so often. I think there's so many high points like that where we're hearing this at events. Yeah, it's hard to put a finger on the highest point. It just I had so many high points throughout the year just from hearing the results that we can get with people, to be fair.
What alternative things do you use in your personal life do you think adults should try?
So alternative is a bad term, because it basically means that it's alternative to what people would usually be doing. And realistically, most alternative methods are how we naturally would be living. You know, it's just natural living, how, you know, that's what a lot of people regard. Not all of it, because I use some alternative stuff like hyperbaric oxygen tanks. I also use, you know, red light therapy, things like this. They're alternative, but they're not obviously natural. Alternative approaches that I would always recommend people use. Oh, it's a good question. I mean, it depends what you would regard as alternative. You know, I really live by and swear by things like cold exposure, you know, cold showers, cold, you know, ice tubs sometimes. I don't think it's like, not necessarily for the same reasons a lot of people push them for, but I really like them. And I think they're really powerful for certain health things. Saunas, massively powerful. Like, one of the most beneficial things you can do is use a sauna frequently, particularly infrared saunas. Again, hyperbaric oxygen tanks, they're very good. These are more like optimization tools. Breath work is very good depending on how you use it. You know, you can use like stimulatory breath work in the early parts of the day when you're kind of flagging, and you can use like parasympathetic breath work, you know, diaphragmatic slow breathing to help regulate yourself for the evening time. I think a lot of the stuff we do would be regarded as alternative, all right, but the reality is it's actually just working with how the body would naturally perform. So yeah, I think most of your life should probably be alternative.